Hello and welcome to the Progressive Gamer Podcast, your weekly dose of gaming news you need to know about. My name is Rick Sanchez and I'm accompanied by my co-host Leroy and a newcomer AOP. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Pretty tired, but I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you,
Doing
AOP?
good. Doing good. Fresh out of work. Was invited to come on, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you for having me on.
Right on. So first off, we have some big news on the Microsoft side of things. First off is a bad news from Playground Games. A couple of big studio head departed from Playground Games. The creators of Forza, a lot of creative minds created their own studio, Maverick Games, stated that they secured the budget to do a new open world game. So this comes with news that the development of Fable seems a little bit complex right now, since the game was announced a couple of years ago and they only released a teaser. And the fact that they are still hiring and filling position right now, it's not going, it doesn't look like it's going that well. And Fable and Forza Horizon are the two games currently in development at Playground Games. So my question is, what games do you think Maverick Games will be developing? An open world action game or open world car game that would be competing with the Forza Horizon?
Sure. To answer the question, I'm not 100% sure, but I think because the devs have in Maverick Games have experience working on car games, that's what they're good at. It would make a lot of sense if they released an open world car game. Also, Forza Motorsport is being released in 2023, which actually isn't open world, so they're not going to have like much competition in the near future, as far as we know. So I think that would make a lot of sense, but I suppose it's also possible that they want the devs want to move on to a different type of project. I read about Maverick Games' philosophies, and they're really focused on creativity and taking risks, which is, I think, a great thing for people who are interested in video games, because it means we're more likely to get some new and interesting and original stuff. So I guess I don't know what direction they're going to take it.
What about you, AOP?
It's interesting, right? Because we're talking about people who have been working on an IP for, I believe, almost 10 years at this point, with the original release of Forza Horizon, which was around the same time as, I believe, Forza Motorsport 3 or 4. So for some of the developers to leave and finally be able to do their own thing, I think that if they were to do an open world game, the expectation of the driving mechanics might be amazing. I think they would probably do something along the lines of Need for Speed: The Run. And what
Hmm.
Need for Speed: The Run was is this cross-country game from Need for Speed, but it was a linear focus game. And if I were to be a betting man, I think something of that nature where you have character interactions plus great car mechanics and the possibility of getting out of the car, because the Forza games you're always locked in. There's no sort of character interaction outside of the vehicle. I think it would be interesting to see. However, we are talking about people who've been working on something for over a decade, and being able to try something new is refreshing, but it's also scary. So I would say if they don't do an open world car game in a sense, they're probably going to go for a freemium model game. And I think that even if they stick to cars, they're going to want to try to do something unique with it. There's never been a car battle royale game as an example.
Hmm.
There has been a Forza Battle Royale mode in Forza Horizon 5, I think, or 4.
Really?
But
Wow.
I think personally that if they are departing from this company, I feel like maybe there was some pressure from the Forza developer to change and do something else. Maybe that's why Microsoft gave them the Fable license, maybe to make them try something new. And maybe because that wasn't working out how they wanted, or they were shifting to work more on Forza Horizon 7 or whatever. I think maybe that could be also the departure. So for me, my guess would be that they would do a totally different way and go like an action open world adventure, like more like an Assassin's Creed style thing, or what
Oh wow.
would a Fable would have been like then. What
Okay.
And they also picked some people from Sumo Digital and some other studios, but like right now both could be a good way to go for them. I think they're a really good studio. The Forza Horizon has always been a really big franchise for the Xbox environment, and it's always been a pleasure every time they release one of their game.
Agreed.
Yeah. So another news coming from Xbox. Xbox announced a new developer direct conference on the 25th of January. In the press conference, they stated some games like Redfall, Forza, and Minecraft Legend, but I thought it was weird that Starfield was not cited in these. It might be there. We don't know yet for sure, but it wasn't stated as the three big games that were gonna be there. So there might be more. We don't know yet, but we're gonna go know soon because 25th of January is coming up pretty quickly. And so my question for you is like, do you think Starfield will be present there, or do you think they should do a different event dedicated to Starfield, because it's coming out in the first half of the year? That's the release window that they gave.
I don't know what they should do because I don't know the state of the game. But it sounds unlikely that they'll be there, right? If they were gonna be there, they probably would have said it. Maybe they'll surprise us, but it seems unlikely. Um, and I do think the fact that they're iffy about a showcase could mean bad things for the development. Like maybe they're not on track. Maybe they don't have enough things to show yet. Um, and like they already delayed the release date once. They could do it again, right? And how embarrassing would it be
Yeah, the
to
first release was
showcase
November
them?
of last year, I think.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe 11, 2022,
Yeah,
2020.
exactly.
I
And
would not be surprised if they delayed it until the end of this year, like Christmas or something, you know?
because they did a
So
presentation when they showed like a bunch of games saying like they will release in the first half of 2023. That was their
mhm,
statement. So now we know that Redfall was on there,
mhm.
Starfield was on there. So what do you think, AOP?
Okay, so the reason why I don't think that Starfield should be there is because personally for me, the last showing that I saw, the trailer, the gameplay footage for Starfield was very underwhelming. And when I mean underwhelming, optimization wise. And it's been a while since I've seen an Xbox showcasing a game that's running what looked like under 20 FPS. The last time I've seen something like that was a game called Scalebound, when Platinum Games was going to make a dragon-based game with Microsoft, and
Yeah,
that
that
got
was
scrapped.
bad. the
So,
the FPS on that was really bad every time they were showing it.
so the scary thing is there's a possibility it's going to get delayed. And if it does get delayed, it would be a surprise announcement. But if it doesn't get delayed, I think they should just hunker down. And Starfield already has a level of hype behind it because it's coming from Bethesda and it's new IP. The only reason why you use a direct is for marketing hype. I don't think they need it, but I guarantee you that if we do see footage of Starfield at the direct, there's going to be a delay announcement right behind it. It's very hard, especially now in recent gaming culture, to see a game trailer and a release date shortly after, where the game will be launched. So
Mhm.
I'm skeptical. After
Yeah.
Fallout
That
76,
makes
I'm
sense.
very
Well, I
skeptical.
hope that they learn also from the mistake from Halo Infinite, where they released a lot of the marketing before the game was released, and then it was bumped a year, and we had like a product of Halo with no
But
games
yeah,
coming out.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, winter update isn't, it's going to hold you until March technically for Halo Infinite for the multiplayer. So
Yeah.
Hopefully by then we get custom game browsers for Infinite. Hopefully,
So yeah, so that was a big news coming from Xbox. I'm very excited to see what they have to say. But from Sony's side, there was also a lot of other news from their sides of things. Naughty Dog gave an interview this week, and they stated that they changed the way that they announce games. Like before, during the Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us Part 2 days, they used to announce games years in advance. And now they're gonna go more of a close to release announcement. So right now they stated that they had a secret project that they were working on after the release of Faction, which we don't have a lot of information right now. We have a website, we have some images and stuff, but we don't have a whole lot of information about Faction that's supposed to be releasing in 2023. That's the online game related to The Last of Us Part 2 world. Yeah, so the rumors said that it would be like a futuristic game, but that's right now all rumors. Nothing pointed to something like could be something like The Last of Us Part 3. We don't know yet. So, what do you think should be the next IP, or do you like to see Naughty Dog work on next, Leroy?
Oh goodness. I don't know. I honestly haven't been following them very closely. Um, I will say though, in regards to like the change in the way they're announcing things, I think that sounds a lot healthier. It seems like lately a lot of companies are making the mistake of announcing their games way too early and committing to a date that it'll be released, and then they can't do it. Either they delay it multiple times, or they release it and it's a buggy mess, like Cyberpunk, right? Or they delay it multiple times and it's still a buggy mess. So I think it's great that this strategy can avoid that happening. And also, Naughty Dog did say that part of the reason they made this change is because these deadlines were creating really unhealthy work environments for the workers, because the people at Naughty Dog were constantly having to do crunch time and just, like, sit there for weeks, days, working really late hours, which is insane and unhealthy, and if they wanna retain good employees and continue to make great games without everybody leaving their company, then I think this is definitely a change in the right direction for them. I don't know what they're gonna make next, but I'm glad to see that they're gonna announce it in, like, a nice time frame where I won't have to wait a million years before it comes out, and I can be sure that it's, gonna be okay.
And what about you, AOP?
I have such a love-hate relationship with Naughty Dog, but I do think that the change is better because the culture behind Last of Us Part 2 was extremely bad. There were at the time of crunch, and I would have to double check the reports that I saw. I believe it was either Kotaku or Bloomberg with Jason Schreier, but there were reports that the crunch was so bad for Last of Us Part 2 that they had to hire outside digital, movie VFX artists to come help finish the project due to that
Huh.
level of crunch. And it was even part of the controversy because I believe one of the awards they won was either game, best studio direction during 2022, and people were like, "How is that the case if there was crunch that occurred to the point where people were quitting or people were, having mental breakdowns in their car?"
Well,
And
because direction doesn't mean like management of a team.
of course,
Director
that's
is more of how the game is presenting itself and
no, of
how
course.
everything is got down to.
But, just it was the idea of like, why would an award be given to a studio as an example that didn't seem to have the best lead from management to
Well, you
help the
could have
team
a
get their
prize for
funding.
management, but I think that would be another
Of
category.
course.
Like
But
Insomniac won 2 times the best place to work in California, I think, 2 years in a row. And that was a video game studio.
mhm,
That's rare in the, the industry, considering like
no,
the
it
crunch and
is.
a lot of people left from Naughty Dog during those years.
They did.
Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us Part 2 made a lot of people leave because
They
the
did.
crunch was a lot and the expectations are super high. So they put a lot of pressure, yeah. And now I
Oh, of
think this
course.
is gonna be more healthy for sure. Like I'm kind of wondering what they're gonna do with Faction because it's an online game. They had some experience with Uncharted 4 and 3 had online, but it's not their focus usually. So we'll see. A lot of people that I know love The Last of Us 1 online part,
It is very good,
but
even to this
I
day.
never tried it because I'm more of a story guy. So
I think you're missing out a little bit.
yeah.
Faction multiplayer is still amazing. You can find full matches even in
Oh my
2023,
god!
a
Now,
decade after release. Yes, even in 2023, you can find full matches. I have, recorded footage of myself playing full matches.
oh my god!
It's
I didn't
still
know
a
it
great
was still going
experience.
on. So, are you
Mhm.
excited for Faction coming out?
No,
No,
I'm
oh
not. Um,
no.
reason being is the way that they announced it. Hey, by the way, remember that multiplayer that was in the leaked footage that we were going to do? We completely scrapped it because we're going to make it a standalone game that's going to be $70.
Because they expanded on
PS5.
it, yeah, for
No, of
years.
course, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it was a little
So like the
weird
little
that
mod that you would have now is gonna be a full grown game. Like,
I hope so, and I hope it's good, but
Better
as
be
a
worth the
person.
price.
Yeah,
yeah.
that was the whole thing with like Last of Us Part One is that even if it's a remake, and I'm air quoting personally, we've had this discussion before,
Yeah,
Rick. You know why
discussion before. Yeah, I know.
we've had that? But just it was the idea that $70 now is going to be extremely pricey for people, and now more than ever, especially with how informative people are becoming with their purchasing power and decisions, games are going to be put under the microscope before people even pick it up to test it out. I think you're going to see a lot more piracy. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more people going to sources they trust. Because if I'm being honest, I don't know about the other people on this call, but gaming journalists for me, they haven't been very trustworthy with some of their decisions when it comes to reviews and stuff like that personally. But if I speak on behalf of myself and none of my co-hosts here. For Naughty Dog, when it comes to Naughty Dog specifically, there is one rabbit trick they can pull out of their hat for this brand new unreleased game: Jack and Daxter. That would probably be the only franchise I can see them pulling out of their bunny hat and trying to make a
I
if they
think
wanted
this
to
is.
continue the
I think this would
series.
be a waste of their talent, really, because you
I
can
I
make good
would
writing
disagree.
in this game. Like, super
I
hard.
would disagree personally, but if they wanted to reboot it or make a part four or at least expand the Jack and Daxter universe, I think it's
With all
possible.
of the tech that they possess right now, you want them to go back to cartoon shit?
I mean, personally, for me, it's platformers are a sore need in this because at least when it came to platforming games, they felt complete. And I think we're in a generation like Leroy was saying that you have games because they're announced years in advance. Expectations are high. All this, they'll spend more money on marketing than the actual budget of the game
I want
itself.
to
It comes
add
out and
one
it'll be
thing
lovely.
on what you said about the
Sure.
pricing of a game. Like I was born in the 1990s, so a $70 in the 1990s was way more than $70 now, right? So like now we have
Right.
games that were on this Nintendo 64 that were sold $60 because game become more popular, and they were selling more. They could keep the price at the same level forever. So nowadays game has never been cheaper in parentheses because um the time frame now is now $70, like, but 30 years later. So it's like pretty much, I don't know why we would raise expectation on a price that's never been raised for 30
Here,
years.
here's the issue, right? I would say the reason why that expectation is there, two things. One, games were able to find a different way of monetizing to the point where
Yes.
people look at games now and they'll be like, this game is just trying to use me as an ATM. Not talking about free to play games. I'm talking about games where you've spent $60. Games like The Division, where as an example, you would have to buy a season pass for the rest of the content.
Ubisoft games,
Plus,
yeah, in
yeah, like
general.
Ubisoft games are a perfect example of
EA,
single player
Activision.
games, multiplayer games, single and multiplayer games, $60 plus season passes on a consistent basis, plus time shortcuts and in-game skins that you have to pay exclusively out of pocket. And people feel as if these games that are 60, even $70 should not have that super exterior way of monetization. And there's nothing wrong with it, because at the end of the day, as a business, you need money to make your games. You need money to maintain servers. You need money to test out and even prototype new things, because there's probably more games on the cutting room floor before they even get in the production phase of games. But it just feels as if, for the consumer, that if you're going to be asking for $70, $60, the price should come with a complete product. And I would say
Yes,
a lot of
exactly.
people don't feel that a lot of the games are complete products. As an example, I have God of War Ragnarok, right? Still wrapped in plastic. People would consider this $60 and or $70, and they would consider it worth it. People decide they felt that this was a complete game at launch, even if it was buggy, even if it has its issues. People were still able to say, "Hey, I got my money's worth." When it came to Cyberpunk 2077, sorry, it's blurring out. When it came to Cyberpunk 2077, people felt that it was not worth the $60 due to how buggy it is. Now, times have changed now. People say the game is stable. I'm still a little angry at this game because I can't get Phantom Liberty as a PS4 user, even though the
Yeah, they
game was
cut you out of the
marketed
market. Yeah,
for PS4. Even though the game was marketed for the system, we get the short end of the stick. So, but to
but
each his own.
God of War,
Yeah,
was it buggy on PS4?
It still is,
Oh,
even with
okay.
version 1.6.
Because I played on PS5 and I had literally no issues.
I wish I was as lucky as you, because my
Oh
experience would have
damn!
definitely been different. But
I
I feel
go
like we
ahead.
don't hear that talked about that much. Like the issues with games on PS4 since the PS5 comes out. Every reviewer's reviews on PS5, and I never hear about the PS4 version of stuff. It's interesting that you played Ragnarok on that system.
Yeah. Well, for me, the biggest thing was just, honestly, it's still kind of hard for me to get a console directly. I try to go through Amazon as an example. I have to request invitation for a queue. Never seen that done before, to like
Jesus, dude.
purchase an item. My local GameStops have closed around me, so if I try to order one online, that's still a bit of an issue, because at least everything with me, you must buy it in a bundle, or I gotta buy it from some dude on eBay. I have to buy it, through a secondhand source for like 800, $900. So, like, for me, it's not like I can just go out and buy a $500 PS5, at least for the moment.
Yeah, I bought mine
So
from a second-hand guy when it came out during
No,
Christmas.
no
you see,
problems.
No
yeah.
problems. It
Was it
was
marked
sketchy,
up?
but it was marked
Was it
up.
new, or was it was
Damn.
already, damn, it
It
was marked
was
up?
new, yeah.
Okay, that's not bad.
Oh, then of course it's marked up. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a guy who received it from his girlfriend, and he already got one and like was selling it. I
Yeah,
got lucky, and because
that's
the markup was really high at that point, like people were selling it at $1,000, and I got it at 800 Canadian. So it was like $100 more than it was selling on
Jesus.
the stores, Because with taxes and everything, it's pretty much $700 that you would pay for
But that's
PlayStation
why I
5.
laughed when I saw the statement of like Sony has sold 30 million units of the PS5. I'm like, to who? To bots, scalpers? Because I still can't find it at the stores, and
I
if they have it, they
tried,
don't showcase it. It's
Maybe
crazy.
one day you'll have the
yeah,
honor of giving that company your money.
because
One day, Sony.
they
One
said
day.
that
Okay.
next year they're gonna release like a lot more PS5, and that the rarity of the consoles are gonna be done soon. So
Okay.
we'll see, but the microchip market is really flooded right now with
Yeah.
the miners, and a lot
Yeah.
of
Miners, scalpers,
microchips
bots.
are draining off the market that we have. We have also phones and stuff that are
Yeah.
a priority over
Mm.
video game consoles. So
No, of course.
yeah, the microchip rarity is gonna go away. I think at some point they're gonna reach. They're gonna solve that problem. I hope. So prices can go
Maybe.
like normal. I wish. It's like wishful thinking. I don't know.
If like the crypto and NFT markets crash, then and people like lose faith in them, then maybe.
That would help a lot.
That definitely would.
I mean, it is kind of happening in many circles. A lot of people are
Yeah.
kind of jaded with them, but there's still people who mind them, of course.
I
So, yeah.
mean, like I hope everybody else did just like what I did. We had to, help support Crypto Zoo online with, Logan Paul and everything. I hope
Oh
everybody
my,
did that.
oh my God.
I wanted to hash eggs and I wanted to be able to like gain ETH and BTC and all that other jazz. I hope you guys did it as well because it was worth the wait. I just had to like an actual video game. It was released and then it was put on pause for a year and a half, and then development is going to start again. Isn't that like he like Logan Paul is an actual game developer?
Crazy.
It was crazy.
So yeah, there was another license from Naughty Dog that got some praise this week. The Last of Us TV show first reviews are out and the critics are in love. The series will debut on January 15th, and at 2 a.m. we're gonna be able to watch the premiere. Empire gave it a 10 out of 10. IGN gave it a 9 out of 10. Collider gave it an A+ stars. Radio Time gave it 5 star. The worst review that was on the first bunch was like Game Reactor, who gave it an 8 out of 10. Stated the changes to the virus and all this stuff, and yeah, so they were all saying that it's like the best movie. TV live action adaptation of a video game, and those reviewers got to see the whole 9 episode entirely. What we're gonna see on January 15th is only the premiere. If you want to talk about it, Leroy, are you into TV shows? Are you excited to see an adaptation of The Last of Us?
Not a game that I played. I've seen some footage of the game, so I'm not that invested.
So it's gonna be all brand new to you.
Expectations. Not 100% brand new. I watched some videos of people playing it and such and whatever, but yeah, I don't have that many expectations going in, which maybe that's a good thing, right? I can just judge the show for what it is. I hope it's good. I really do, because I think it's good when they can get video game adaptations right. However, I do wonder, like, I don't always trust critics, right? I disagree with them sometimes, and I do wonder if the reviews were a little bit inflated because their expectations were low based on the fact that this was a video game adaptation.
Well, I don't know, because they put it at like the level of Game of Thrones in those reviews, and the budget that they put in this is comparable to Game of Thrones. So for the first season of 9 episodes, they put $100 million into it, and more than
they did have a
$100
nice
million.
budget.
And everybody says the music from Gustavo or something like is like out of this world. I hear all I read like 2 or 3 of these reviews, and they were really, really enticing to hear.
Okay.
So I'm very excited.
It makes sense that for something
it's
like
HBO,
a game so story based.
A lot of HBO shows are different than what you would find in any other network,
HBO has some good stuff.
What do you think, AOP?
You look disappointed. You were rubbing your face. And
I need Rick. I just want to make sure I didn't mishear. Did you say they made changes to the virus? Did I hear that right?
Well, it's how it's transporting itself. Instead of going through the spores in the air, it's a fungus, but it's not transferable by air. Because they said they didn't want the actors to wear masks. And a lot of places in The Last of Us, they have to go inside and wear masks nonstop. And they said that if they would have done that, everybody would have been like infected, or have to wear a mask all the time. So they they changed that, the propagation of the virus.
So you're telling me because of COVID, like actual virus, they can't wear the gas mask?
No, it's because Hollywood doesn't like that you cover actors' faces.
Yeah, not because of COVID.
Because
they want to be able to see
you paid for those faces. Yeah, you paid millions for those faces.
No. Okay, this is where it loses me. Here's where I have a problem, right? The first thing is that you have Neil Druckmann himself writing and even directing some episodes, as he said himself. There is no reason for a change like that to be made due to how important it is for the character of Ellie.
No,
The
for Hollywood.
revelation of no, for again, we're going off of the IP. Ellie was able to prove to Joel that she was not infected by going into an area where the spores were without wearing a mask and breathing it in just fine. Now, what I'm saying is, you didn't
Yeah.
have to do it a million times. You need at least that one scene of, hey, this is how you get spores.
Well,
Maybe
she
one or
could be
two scenes where you
bitten.
see
Yeah.
it. But she was already bitten.
Yeah, but she could be bitten. Yeah. Isn't the scars showed him that she wasn't?
But
Wasn't the gun that the guy put on her back to look was the time where he known she was immune? Because
what
it showed
happened
that
is
she was infected at that point.
so what happened in the scene is that Joel, Ellie, and Tess were officially leaving the quarantine zone of Boston. They
Yeah,
just made their way out through that little hut that they had. They're going up this trailer while it started to rain near the entrance, and they get caught by two soldiers. The soldiers are checking them for infection. They have them kneel down,
exactly. They have the gun to
and
check if they're infected.
the dude is looking away while he checks Ellie. Ellie stabs the guy. Joel and
Oh, so he
Tess kill
doesn't
them
see.
both.
Yeah,
The
he doesn't
soldier doesn't
see.
see. Joel and Tess find out, but Joel doesn't believe her.
He still doesn't believe her.
Eventually,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
he
it's
didn't believe
after
her
that.
even when Tess got bit. Even when Tess got bit and she
Yeah.
decides to send them on
Well,
the
I'm
way,
excited to
he
see
still
how
didn't
they're
believe
gonna
her.
change it. I feel like,
Oh
as
no!
a guy
Oh
who've
no!
seen and played already The Last of Us, seeing another version of it might make it more interesting to watch if it doesn't
I'm
follow the
it,
exact same thing. You know, it's
but
like a
it's weird.
remake
Like
who would make change to the actual story. You know,
yeah, no, you can't even say that because Last of Us Part One didn't do that
because
itself. Like
it's
it's
an
a remake. It's not a
adaptation.
remake.
It's an
But
adaptation. You know.
here's the problem though. It's weird for the adaptation to have changes when you have direct support from the person that created the IP. Like if it was as an example, right? Imagine a Harry Potter video game
Well, that means
that doesn't
that
have
he's open.
oversight from J.K.
I
Rowling,
think that
right?
just
Doesn't have
means
any
that he's
oversight from.
open-minded to change, doesn't that? Because he was involved in the whole thing, so he had to be okay with it.
But what I'm saying is that those changes shouldn't happen because he's connected. It's not something where somebody is making an adaptation without any sort of connection or oversight
No, and even
with
the
the original
oversight
creator.
was okay with those changes, so it
But
might make more sense when we see it than we envision it right now.
I really hope so because
Yeah.
that was a very important scene for both those
There's a lot
characters.
of important scene. I think that this
I
is gonna
agree,
be really intense. I'm
but
really excited to see what they
this
do.
is why I'm saying you didn't need a million scenes with the gas mask on. You at least use it to establish the situation. That was a very important scene because Joel, even after Tess got bit, still didn't believe her when she was about starting to get infected and she decides to commit suicide and deal with the soldiers coming in. He still didn't believe her until he got to the train station and he saw her just absorbing spores like everything was
Yeah.
fine. This is the only reason why I have a problem is because Neil Druckmann himself specifically said this is the most authentic video game adaptation yet.
Yeah.
The
Because you can
expectation
be
from gamers.
authentic to characters and not and have some small change in lore like this. If
I
it
hope
is
it's small.
consistent in the story, like it can be really like in the same writing, the same music style, the same visual style, the same like fungus
it's
infected walls and stuff.
It only works if it's small. If
Yeah.
the changes are big, that's when I'm like,
And
you
I think
can't use that man.
it's gonna feel small because it's not a
I
big
really do hope
focus
so.
of The Last of Us, the
What's not a big focus?
the way
The
that it
infected?
spreads, like the mode of transportation of the virus. Like I think when I heard that, I saw this big scene in The Last of Us Part 2 where Ellie breaks her mask and she
Yeah,
already told her friend that she was immune, but she didn't believe it. They were
she
high and they
told
were like, "Oh, it's a joke," and then she was gonna take her mask off, and she's like, "No, I'm good, I'm good." And I was like,
but
"This
you
is
see
an
why it's
intense
important.
scene," and that
But
was important. Yeah, that's
but that makes it important
yes,
because
but I feel
it
like you
can be
could change
used
that
as a
scene to
tool.
make it intense in another way, if the virus transport differently. Like you
But
can adapt it.
But the thing is that's what made the virus unique because the virus is based off of an actual real world virus known as the
Yeah,
cordyceps fungus. And the fungus was literally kill the
but the
host, find
fungus
a
is still
location.
there. The infection is still there. It's just the mode of propagation. Like it's very
No, of
specific
course.
change of the lore.
But the issue is that if you, as an example, what if the mode of transportation is through biting? Then it's just regular zombies at that point. It kind of removes that unique element of The Last of Us of an actual real world fungus crossing that boundary of insects and animals to humans. That was the most interesting part about that infection because it was something that what if that actually happens with us? There are certain diseases out here that only affect insects or beings in the wild or like, certain creatures. What happens if those changes actually went over?
Yeah,
Now
but
that's why
the problem
I
is
hope
that
that
for
I hope
me,
the change it makes sense. But
the,
if it's just regular biting, then you're just turning them into regular zombies at that
yeah, but the thing is that from my experience with the games,
point. Hmm.
the first one, the most important thing about the game is the relationship between Joel and Ellie. That's the big focus of
I agree.
the first
I
game for me.
absolutely agree.
So
I
that's
absolutely
what's
agree.
important to be well represented in that version of the TV show. And if because there's already talk about the second season, I feel like the second season would be really hard to do because even in 10 episodes, how could you do that big of a story? And like it's gonna be rough. I don't know how they're gonna do it if they want to
The
adapt Last
only
of Us
thing
Part
is
Two.
that I hope it because the problem is even with the relationship, I hope it's not just a generic zombie show because you
No, I
already
don't
had that
think
with The
it
Walking
is
Dead.
because
I
we
hope
already
not.
seen like I've seen from the background and anything you can see the fungus on the walls and
No,
stuff.
but that's where the spores came in
Yeah,
specifically, and that's what made it unique. Because
well,
if it's like Walking
there
Dead
was
level of just that's the mode of
there was
transportation, that
stuff like
sucks.
that on some walls where you had no mask in The Last of Us. I think.
And when
I'm
it comes
sorry.
to the adaptation, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. I really did enjoy The Last of Us one, I, and the reason why I might seem like I'm being a bit more defensive or aggressive is because video game adaptations normally have not been deemed good. I can't really say without maybe 3 to 4 products on my hand that most of the products have been bad. And when I mean bad, I don't mean bad in the sense of representing the game. I mean bad just in the sense of being terrible products to watch, whether it's
Yeah,
movies, whether it's TV shows.
I can agree
As
with
an
you, but this
example,
time the good thing that they have going for them
the,
is budget and studio. The guys at HBO rarely make a bad
even with
game,
that,
a bad
we've gotten burnt
video.
so much though. That's the only problem. We've been burnt so much.
I
Like as an
know,
example, Netflix announced a live action Assassin's
but
Creed
Netflix made ton of
thing.
crap adaptation. Netflix makes ton of crap movies,
You get
but HBO rarely makes anything bad.
I'm not. Well, you can say Game of Thrones season 8 or 7. You can
Season
like
eight,
there's
they
certain
made
things that you
eight
can throw
good
out.
season before they screwed up. Like most of their
But
show have 1 or 2 or 3 season and
and
HBO.
I
It's
agree.
really
It can work well, but the issue is that we can't forget it's a video game adaptation, and they have never truly been good
I know,
consistently. They've been good, and they were like it'll be like once every 5 years, once every 10 years, we'll get something good.
and
The
that's
most recent that I've seen has been the Sonic movies, the live action
yeah,
movies. There's a possibility it hasn't released yet is the Super Mario movie
yeah.
because it's made by Illumination, who has a good track record. I'm not saying HBO doesn't have a good track record. I'm not saying the possibility of this can't be good, but most live action video game adaptations have been bad. Not all, but most.
Yeah, and the thing is also that the reviews that came out came from video game places. It's
Yeah, but
weird
who
to
trusts
have like a
IGN?
TV
But who
show
trusts
exactly
who
rated
trusts
by
who trusts
IGN.
IGN?
Like
No, that's not
IGN
true.
can
They
be
rated Rings of
okay.
Power. and a bunch of other stuff. That's not true. They rate TV
Yeah,
shows
they
as
rate
well.
TV show, but every time they do, it's really opposite of what people are thinking. Or like they rate a movie like the Witcher movie thing, they rate it super high, and like the critics were super bad on that movie. Like
Yeah, The
every
Witcher, Blood
time,
Origin,
yeah, Blood
Rings of
Origin,
Power,
like they
they
rated like
and
8 or 9, like, and the
yeah,
critics
and
were
most people
super bad,
disagreed.
and like
Oh,
yeah, so sometimes they're really off, and they're really all over the place when it comes to TV shows. So I don't really trust IGN for video content like TV, films, or anything. I think that they should keep for video games, in my opinion.
I
But
agree.
yeah,
I agree.
that's why when I see like video game Collider, like Empire, or like IGN or Game Reactor, these are all like video game publications. So it's kind of hard to take them seriously as a cinematographic like review.
No, I agree. But at the end of the day, I still haven't seen it.
Yeah,
The only reason why I want to be extra harsh is because I really do enjoy the product and I want it to succeed. I
yeah.
really, really do. Because if we can start at least getting good, consistent live action adaptations, that can bring more people who haven't experienced the games. Hey, you know what? Let me try the games. That's what happened when Witcher was successful. The Witcher series was good, that it got more people to focus on Witcher the game.
And it was a
And
super
I would
great
love
success
that. And
financially. The rate,
yeah.
the sales of Witcher 3 went through the roof when that series came out. I feel like a lot
But
of
what
devs
helped
wants
was
to
the
repeat that.
adaptation started off good. But I heard season two and season three of Witcher wasn't doing so hot to the point Henry Cavill decided to leave.
I think
And then I
that
heard Witcher
this
Blood
first
Origin did
season didn't
bad.
do that great either.
Uh,
Personally, I'm not a big
no,
fan of the first
it
season.
was enough to like, hey, it's Henry Cavill. It's for a lot of people, hey, it wasn't an adaptation of the games; it was an adaptation of the books. This is
Yeah,
interesting.
but it was so
And
confusing, like the timeline they did in the
oh
first
yes,
season.
absolutely,
I thought it
that
was
was the dumbest thing they
so
could have done.
bad, like storytelling, like what
But
the hell.
that's the only reason why. And I apologize again. I don't want people to think I'm like trying to be combative on purpose, but I really do like the Last of Us IP, and I want it to succeed because if it does well, the people who worked on this, if they can do this well, you know what I would say? I trust you guys to make a live action Resident Evil series because Netflix can't do it right, or none of the Resident Evil movies have been
Nobody
done right.
can do a good Resident Evil series.
If you can, like, Last of Us is zombies esque, and I don't want to call them zombies just because it just like, but if they can do this right, I would ask the people, please work on a Resident Evil live action.
Yeah.
Like if it's good, but that's if. And I
I wanted to talk a little about Sony hardwares coming soon,
Sony
because
Pony, let's
there's a
go.
lot of Sony hardware that are coming out in the next 2 months. The
Nice.
first big one is PSVR 2, the second iteration of the PlayStation VR. The first one came with like the Move controller and had like a camera that you
Yeah,
had to put in front and everything. So this thing
I
is coming out
mean,
February 22nd, 2023. Some of the functionality of this helmet is going to be camera tracking inside of the helmet, custom sense controllers made by Sony, like with haptic feedbacks, like the PlayStation 5 DualSense. There's also haptics in the helmet, weirdly, and there's two 2000 by 2040 OLED 4K, and only one wire to make it all work. So would those functionality make you want to make the jump to VR? Do you think that this is a product that would interest a lot of PlayStation owners? Do you think that there's a future in VR?
So I have an Oculus Rift,
oh,
and well, my partner and I do, and well, it has like a line of dead pixels right now. Um, but I played it for a good bit, mainly played Beat Saber. You know, I just don't think VR is convenient enough and accessible enough, and I don't think it has enough good titles and like the graphics for these titles and the budget necessary is just like not there. I think right now it's still being developed and is not worth it for your average person to invest in. The PSVR 2 is going to be a bit more expensive than the Oculus. I think we got it discounted about like 300. PSVR is going to be $550 for me. that steep. Now, I've heard that it is leaps and bounds better than its predecessors, which is great. Like, I like that this technology is developing, and it does have more titles on it that look relatively high quality that would make me more interested in playing, such as a Resident Evil game, um, also The Walking Dead, and
Yeah, a lot of
they're
these ports like Resident Evil are also going to be free if you own the game already.
that's great. I like that. I think that that's making it more attractive, but I still think the scope is pretty low. And besides a few major titles, the other games looked so. Um, I mean, I am still excited about the technology, but it's just not able to replace regular video games yet. Also, do you want to talk about like the technical features that they're adding? They're adding eye tracking. That's what like the cameras in the headset
Yeah,
do,
I'm
which I
I'm
think.
wondering if
Mhm.
that's gonna help me with my sickness. Cause me, I had PlayStation VR one, and I got rid of it instantly. Cause I tried
Wow.
some of the games on it, and it was making me sick. Like I couldn't really play it for a long time. So I was like, it's nice for a
No, I
party
don't.
for 2 seconds, but I can't play those games.
This is not gonna solve that. The eye tracking seems to be
Wow.
another method of, like, movement. So, like, if you're on a selection screen, it can see what you're looking at, so you can select it with your eyes. I mean, I'm sure there's probably other ways they're gonna use it, probably including tracking your eyes and
To
seeing what you're
adapt the
staring at
camera,
for
yeah.
marketing. Oh, I was gonna say for marketing purposes.
Oh no, I think it's also like
Yeah.
they're gonna use that to maybe move the camera to where you're looking at, so it maybe make you less sick.
Yeah, that would make sense. I that could make you less sick, but a lot of why people get sick is because they're in place when it feels like they should be moving,
Yeah,
and so
pushing
your
the
brain goes
joystick
out of whack.
forward was messing me up. If the character
Right.
was not going at the right speed, instant, I was feeling bad instantly.
Yeah, it's a mismatch between, like, the visual input versus, like, how your body's moving, right, and the balance you feel, and so that causes motion sickness for a lot of people, so the eye tracking, as far as I'm aware, would not solve that. Maybe if you're running in the game, you can get on a treadmill, but I don't know what can be done besides that. I think you just have to get used to it, unfortunately. I am happy about, like, the haptic feedback, which, I don't know, pretty basic feature, but I like it in controllers. It makes things feel nice, and I think it'll add to the immersion a lot in the game.
But
Although
now
they
it's weird. They
also
have feedbacks on the
the
helmet too.
headset.
Yeah,
Yes, that okay, that's odd to me. In your
that's
hand,
weird.
sure. On
Yeah,
your head, I don't know. There better be a setting to turn it off because I think it'd be
there's a
really
hundred
obnoxious
percent
to some people.
setting to
It
set
has
it off.
to
There's
be.
already a setting to set it off on PlayStation if you
Yeah.
want to.
But I'm glad the graphics seem better and, like, they're making strides. Just, again, still not worth it yet, at least not for me to, like, completely switch over. If I had the disposable income to blow $550 on something that I play every once in a while, then sure, I'd get it because VR is cool, but, uh, until I'm rich, I'm gonna be waiting until the technology develops to a point where it's really worth it.
Really affordable, yeah, and accessible with a lot of
Affordable, accessible.
content.
Right, with a lot of content. I think that's what matters most
Yeah,
because even if I have the VR headset, all I did was play Beat Saber for the most part, right?
and Beat
This is
Saber
not
is gonna
replace.
be available with PlayStation VR
Yes!
too.
I'm so happy about that, but I would make the switch from Oculus to PlayStation actually because of, ba Facebook. So, Zuckerberg, and all the weird meta
The
stuff, like,
meta.
I don't know, and you have to
Yeah.
have a
Now
Facebook
you have a
account
Meta
linked to
Quest,
your
yeah.
Oculus. I'm like, I don't wanna do all that. I
And
would
if
rather
do you
switch.
have a Meta Quest One? Do you have Oculus Quest One?
I think we have 2.
Okay, because Quest One, they just announced that they're stopping the support for this helmet right now. That was released in
Ooh,
2019, I think.
No, I
that
think we
is
have
crazy.
2.
Yeah, they just announced
Uh,
that this week.
I
Uh,
mean, the technology's moving kind of fast, which is another reason I don't know if it's worth investing so early
yeah, I
because
think
'cause you're
they're
gonna
cutting
lose
down
that.
all social features and stuff. So, what do you
Mhm.
think about that, AOP? About the new PlayStation VR 2 and Sony doing a new PlayStation hardware.
It's kind of reminding me of something. What I have in my hand is one of Sony's greatest failures, right? And
PlayStation Vita.
PlayStation
Oh.
1000 OLED model, right? Great hardware, very interesting for the time.
I agree.
One
Great hardware.
simple flaw messed it up completely, and that was proprietary memory cards costing exorbitant prices. That literally crippled this system. Not only that, but the lack of marketing. And this is the problem that I've noticed leading into VR with Sony. They didn't really market PlayStation VR a lot, if I'm being 100% honest.
Mhm.
And part of the problem that I noticed is that for Sony, sometimes when it comes to certain products, and this is a lot of companies, if it's not a surefire success, they will drop it. But Sony does it quietly. They're not going to make a public announcement about it. Just slowly but surely, they will just slowly drop support and just no longer work on the product. I'm not a VR person. I haven't gotten into VR. Um, the thing about VR for me is that one thing that would make me get into it specifically for Sony is if they were to make an announcement, sort of like all first person video games that were created by first party studios run on VR.
Mm.
I think something of that nature where any game that was already previously made doesn't need to get like a whole VR patch or a VR version and you're able to play it in first person.
That would be
I
a
think that
big
would
ask for
help.
every studio,
That would be.
though.
That would be.
Mhm.
But if you want to push VR forward, like we have somebody here,
Yeah.
VR person, the only thing they were playing was Beat Saber.
But then don't you
And
think that this gonna affect like the development of these games? Like these studios are gonna think about how
well,
they're gonna adapt it to VR. And
well, if VR is such a stepping stone, it should be incorporated into the development process, shouldn't?
I feel like
Because
it's more of a side stuff, even for
but
Sony. Like,
but if you want to, but the thing is, if you want people to shell out $550,
yeah,
you have to like treat it like a premium product. Like, what's the point of you spelling out $1,000+ for, as an example, Oculus, a Meta Quest 2, and the only thing you're using is Beat Saber, right? Aren't you going to feel a little peeved, like, man, I spent a lot of money and this can literally do only one thing? You know, like, and I'm only bringing that up as an example, Leroy, just because it's like, if you could do more with you, would you use it for more things? If you could play more games, you can do more features with it. Would you try to at least attempt to use it?
Absolutely. Now, I do think there are barriers like the motion sickness and the comfort of the headset. I think it's
Mhm.
hard to fit all the necessary components to have like high quality gameplay
Mhm.
in a headset and still make it comfortable. Um, and I wear glasses. You still have to wear glasses in VR.
Uh,
Yeah, so they have like a little extension on it that makes
well,
it so you can put
the
it over your
new
glasses.
uh, the
It's
new
not very
HTC
comfortable, I believe.
Vive doesn't have that. You have
wow.
lenses inside the mask
How does that work for different
because you
prescriptions? Like,
can
what do the
adjust
lenses
it
do?
while it's on.
Saying you would have to like set up your
Yeah,
focus, I'm
you set
guessing,
up your
individually.
focus.
Oh, that's
But
It's called
cool.
they were just there
And
at the
maybe
CES
pain in the
this week,
ass.
showing the new HTC. I don't remember the name, but it's yeah. So you don't have to wear glasses inside of this VR headset specifically.
I
I don't
would
know if that's
say,
better or worse.
I will say one thing, right? If you want VR to succeed, you have to implement it. You have to treat it like a product of that you want it to succeed. As an example, right?
Sure, yes, absolutely.
When it comes to Xbox and it comes to Game Pass and it comes to first party studios, they will go out of their way to make sure that it operates and it's functional with Game Pass, not only on consoles but PC at launch interchangeably, seamlessly. Because
I don't know.
that's
I
something that
had a
Xbox wants to
lot of
succeed.
problems with the new Minecraft Legend. We tried to play, me and my friend, and
Hmm.
couldn't make it work. And we were both on Xbox Series
Oof.
X.
But that's why I'm like, if VR is going to be important, you have to treat it like an important product. I'm holding a product that could have been a competitor. Like there could have been a VR2 or another thing that could have rivaled the Nintendo Switch under Sony.
Yeah,
They let this
handheld
die and they
died.
just
Yeah,
died handhelds completely. It's dead. I have not seen or heard anything. Like
Switch
this is a
replaced
piece
the
of history.
handheld market
Like this is literally a
altogether.
piece of history that I'm possibly holding in my hand, where like there will no longer be any sort of handhelds coming out of the Sony space because now handhelds are moving towards cloud gaming, and they're
Yeah,
like cloud gaming devices, right? But it's not
cell
handhelds in a sense
phones.
where a device where you can literally just built for handhelds. Like
Yeah, and
you
the
want to
cell
play
phones are
outside,
also
use
big,
this.
taking a big part of the industry right now. They're
Yeah,
selling more cell phone than any other game companies out there.
and
Like
I mean, yeah, because it's accessible. Everyone, like most people,
exactly,
have a cell phone and they'll
everybody
download a
has
game
it
on it.
in their hand all day, so
Yeah,
and
it sells a lot.
I find it interesting because the most interesting thing about it is that Microsoft isn't fighting in the VR space.
They don't care about it. They said they
You
don't
know,
want it.
and the same thing with Nintendo. Like, Nintendo as an example, they could do something where they just like set up the
Well,
Switch,
there
you
was
make a little
the
makeshift VR,
VR
and you set
lab,
it up the
yeah.
Switch. Yeah, like that. Like
Well, they did
the
it.
the
There's VR lab,
but
I
and you can play Breath of the Wild in VR.
it seems to me like a gimmick more than anything at this point,
It's
though.
super
Right?
dumb.
I agree with you about marketing and treating products you want to succeed like they're gonna succeed.
yeah,
Totally, 100%. Right? Not marketing well does make things fail. However, I think that if they did that right now in the current state of VR, it may not work because I just don't think VR is ready yet. I think it is a nice gimmick. It's fun, it's interesting, it's a new experience, but I think most people prefer to just play games the way that they're used to. I think like there are a number of other barriers outside of the technology itself. I do think the technology itself needs to get to a better place before it's worth all these companies investing. So yeah, they're going to make iterations on it that aren't marketed as heavily and test them with a more niche set of customers before they like make the next one and perfect it. But I think there are other barriers that make me believe that even in the far future when VR technology is great, I don't know if it's gonna be the main form of gaming.
Exactly.
I,
Like
I
yeah,
for
agree.
me, my
I
opinion
absolutely agree.
my opinion on VR is that right now it's not for me. I tried the earlier version. I want to try the new version and see the improvement they made because it looks like this helmet is a really big improvement from the last one. The thing is, like, I don't want Sony to lose development time on those big titles that I prefer to play on my TV and without VR. So I don't want them to lose any development time on new franchise that I want to try or continuation of the franchise that I love. So I don't want to VR to be like a main focus. I'd like it to stay on this side, really.
No,
there,
and I
mhm.
think that's perfectly fine. The only thing is, if that's going to be the case, like I don't think like Sony, you shouldn't be selling that for $550 then.
But the
Because
first
yeah,
VR
if
was
it's going to
a
be a niche,
financial success. So I feel like they invested more on this one and it's gonna work better. The first one was really, I think, an
It's
experiment, and the second one is like
yeah.
more of a
but like
finished product.
but the thing is, if majority of the people, like Leroy said, feel that it's gimmicky, then you're already shooting yourself in the foot at the time because, like you said, the technology isn't ready. It's not like, as an example, the VR has been tried, true, and tested, and what Sony's doing is, as an example, like the GPU market, where Nvidia allows people to use, hey, this is what a 40 series card is going to be, and you'll have like EVGA, and
Yeah,
then you
because
have
it's a
Asus and all
whole
this stuff.
screen. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in VR. You have like
No,
Yeah.
of
controllers, you
course,
have screens,
but
you have
it's
3D
just it's
effect, you
but
have
I would guess
$550, man.
it's
yeah, but
okay.
That's a
two
tough
It's
hill
a
to
OLED
lot,
climb.
but
4K
listen,
screen. It's a lot, dude. Like my OLED TV costs 1.8K and it's 55 inch. You get a 4K in your face like screen for $600.
yeah, it's so I think for the tech that they have and like the improvements, I actually think it's a reasonable price. Like the PlayStation 5 was what, $500? Like, it's not even VR or anything fancy, it's just an upgrade of this, console that everyone's used to, so, like, if that's $500, tack on an extra 50 to make it VR, okay. Um, I also think that they can charge this price because it's niche. Right now, it's not in the stage where most people would wanna use it or spend the money on it, so it's okay.
Yeah,
The
it's kind of like
people
why I was
who
saying that the
Mhm.
games in the 90s were $60. It was because no one was buying it. Now they can charge
Right.
the same
This
price and make a bunch of more
in
money.
in gaming, this right, VR, I think, is like a luxury product basically, and it's niche, and,
I
like,
agree.
if someone's
I
really
agree.
dedicated to it, then they will be willing to spend that money,
Mhm.
they'll drop that money on the VR headset instead of a different console, right? It's not a ridiculous amount of money, but I do think that this is technology that,
It's not
wealthier
ready yet.
people have more access to. Yeah,
Yeah.
And the
which
more
it's not
VR
ready yet.
that's
Mhm.
gonna sell, the more the price is gonna drop
Yeah,
down, the more the market is gonna develop. That's I think what they're
yeah,
trying to, because I don't think they're gonna make 50 million PlayStation VR to release. I just think they're gonna sell like
right.
all of what
Exactly.
they think they're gonna sell. So they're gonna probably do a couple millions to start with, see if the market is good, is buying it, and then upgrade
Yeah.
the
They shouldn't
market.
manufacture that many. I also do wanna say
Mhm.
another barrier is VR. I mean, I guess there's AR, altered reality, which can somewhat solve
It's
this
augmented
problem.
reality, yeah.
Yeah, or yeah, augmented, yeah. It can somewhat solve this problem, but I don't know, VR, like, is kind of inconvenient because you have to like, you can't see the environment around you in the real world, and
Mhm.
so a lot of people, for the best, most immersive experience where they're not worrying about knocking into something or someone, or, kicking their dog in the
Well,
leg
you
or
could
something.
have a camera that opens up and sees in front of you, you know?
Yeah, but well, they have that on, like, menus and stuff, and they actually can also mimic the environment around you, but kinda reskin it, that's also a thing. But the problem is, like, when you're playing a game, you wanna be immersed, that's the whole point of VR,
Yeah,
and that
AR doesn't
immersion
work
comes
for good.
yeah, right, that comes at the cost of the environment around you, being able to
For
see it, and so a lot of
gaming,
people have to
AR.
have a dedicated open space for
Yeah.
VR, and a lot of people don't have that,
Yeah.
and if you don't have that, a lot of the time, you can't afford a headset anyway,
It's
right? So,
another
like, there's
block,
just more
yeah.
costs piling on top of each other. So I don't know, it's fine. We can just
Yeah.
wait.
So
Yeah,
no,
I think that's the case. I think waiting is fine. Sony still wants to be an early adopter. However, I do think that for them, if it doesn't do well, PSVR is going to be joining somebody in the graveyard. That's just my
Ah,
personal opinion. I
I
don't
don't
think,
think it's
like, as
gonna
an
be a
example,
failure, but
I don't think that as an example, there's going to be a PSVR 3, a PSVR 4. If it doesn't do well
mm,
for them, like as an example, if Microsoft is like, hey, we want to focus on first parties and Game Pass, as an example, they just want to focus on that because they can refine what they're
still
working on
haven't
or
seen any
introduce new
result on that
technologies
though.
on it. No, of course, but
Yeah.
that's why I'm like,
But like the
only time
PS1
will
was
tell.
a good enough success for them to invest in PS2. I think that their expectation for the market is reasonable, and I think that they're gonna sell
Okay.
a lot for sure.
I hope it
Um,
does well, but I'm just going off of the past experience
and
where like the
then
first thing does well,
mm,
second thing just goes
because
down.
Sony
I
doesn't
don't
drop their
know.
product really, like I've never seen Sony drop a product right away.
I think
Not
maybe
right
being an
away. That's what
early
not right
if
away.
they establish themselves within communities that really care about VR and like VR, if they become like the biggest name there, then I think even though they're gonna have to dump more money into this technology until it
Uh,
becomes profitable, I think it could turn out to be a good move depending
oh,
on what
that
the future
yeah.
holds.
Yeah.
If you're an
So
early
we'll see.
adopter,
But I think
yeah. If you're
I
an
think
early
more of a
adopter, then
side
yeah,
business than
absolutely.
anything else. Like that's how I
Sure.
see
No,
it.
I agree. I agree.
And
Yeah.
That's why I'm
so
like,
there was another hardware that released this week, that will release soon from Sony. It's the DualSense Edge. It's like the premium controller that Xbox
mm,
has been doing. They did two versions
mm,
of their premium controller. Now Sony is coming out with their
Mhm.
version of DualSense Plus Plus. So it's coming out January 26th, and it's gonna be priced at $200. And they added like two buttons on the back, like paddles that you can change, like the classic special controllers. There's also two switches like in the bottom where you can change the distance of the trigger and adjust like when the triggers like gets tension and when it releases. There's also a US. That's interesting. It's like a USB-C cable with a locking mechanism that goes on the controller and that locks in so that you cannot break the USB-C, because a lot of
That's
controller
pretty good.
I had problems with that where you had to play with the USB to make it recharge. Otherwise, it would just have a bad connection. There's three sets of thumbsticks you can change with a couple of sets of toppers on top of it. There's a new grippy back of the controllers, and there's an entire new menu to set up your all of the haptics and all this stuff, all the controls to your liking. So, yeah. So, do you think the price of the DualSense Edge makes any sense to you? And who do you think would be interested in this kind of product? Do you think that it's a lot of people? What about you,
Two,
Hilary?
$200 is a pretty big ask. I mean, again, I'm not a PlayStation person. I mostly use PC, so I guess I'm not that invested in the controller market, right? But it seems like a lot. Like it seems like they added some useful features, but like the thumb grips, you could probably buy some decent replacement thumb grips for your standard controller for pretty cheap.
On
Like a lot of these,
Amazon?
yes, for like a few dollars, and it would be probably similar quality. Like I don't know, there's only so much quality you can make it. I think the main thing that makes this good is the ability to change the sensitivity and like the travel distance of the different sticks on the controller. And I think for most people they won't need this, but I think that this one feature could make it worth it for competitive players, especially in like first person shooters,
Yeah, or
because
the
that's where they
R2.
need the
You
accuracy and to
can
be able
do
to
also
customize.
you can do
Mhm.
also adjust the R2 button where when the trigger like gets a little pull, it's already like full press.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yep.
instant on and off.
Right. So great for competitive players. Average person, I don't think there's any way they'd drop 200 on a controller with like one actually really useful feature. Again, only really useful to those who are pretty competitive. So,
Yeah, what about you, AOP?
It was about time, right? The Sony is pretty much going against Microsoft's Xbox Elite controller, which is on their second version. Possible third version going to be coming soon for the series consoles. Um,
Oh yeah, I forgot to
there's
say it comes with a rechargeable case like the
yeah,
Xbox controller 2, I think,
yeah.
where
The
the
series
battery.
controller two had the battery inside of the case, and what happens is that there would be a USB-C port in the case, and all you would have to do is, as long as the controller was put in properly, you can literally charge the controller inside of the case, zipped up. So
Yeah, I think that's what
I
they're
owned
doing
a
with the
owned a
PlayStation Edge too.
so the thing
okay.
is that there's going to be one problem that I can already see that's going to happen with this PlayStation Edge is that it's going to be heavy as shit. And the reason being is that I actually own one of the competitors of that product, Scuff Controller. So with the Scuff Controller, what happens is that there's customizable options of adding back paddles if you want. The same situation where you have the trigger, where, as an example, on the high setting, I don't
Yeah,
go down all
similar
the way.
features of this
So
controller.
the thing is
Mhm.
with the Scuff controller, what helps out is that you have the option of not only adding the grips, not only changing out the thumbsticks if you want, not only being able to choose what button that you want sit here on the back options with a specific magnet, but you can remove the haptics from this completely to make it lightweight. A big problem that I had with the Xbox
Ah.
Series controller is that it was very heavy. Even, it had its own set of triggers. It worked well on PC when I plugged it in with a USB-C wire. It worked well on pretty much every Xbox console that I've tested it out on, but it was a very heavy controller. And when it comes to competitive play, you want something that's extremely light due to the
Mhm.
fact that, big thing is that you're going to remove vibration anyway because vibration messes up your aim. for a lot of
Mhm.
the competitive games because of that feedback and the shaking that you get all the time. So I think it could work, but if they have the heavy haptic in there, it's going to be more of a detriment than a benefit. Now, the only thing that I think is going to be unique that this one doesn't have, because all it has is this little extra lip here, where pretty much what it does is that like the USB cable isn't
It
supposed to
sits
jet.
better in
Yeah,
the.
like it sits a tad bit better, but if it's true what you're saying, where you can lock it in to make sure it doesn't move at all, that's even better.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
this. It's like something that you plug in and locks in the controller, and then you plug
right.
the cable inside of that.
And I had a feeling it was coming because Sony released a product a while back for I think $60, where it was literally you plug it into the USB port of the regular controller, and it would pretty much give you the two buttons on the back. Um,
Yeah, that was an add-on for the PS4 controllers. Yeah.
yeah. So if it's lightweight, and again, this was like $250, because again,
Okay.
I customized it, right. I went for the color, I went for the grips, I went for a higher stack. This controller was recommended to me by people who are like playing Call of Duty seriously, and I was attempting to get into it. I never did though.
So
But
price
like,
was pretty comparable to what you paid.
yeah.
Fair
And
enough then.
right now, looking at if you were to look up the Series 2 Xbox controller, which
Yeah,
would
how
be
much is it?
it would be currently it's 179, but at release it was like 220.
220. Okay.
So that's like the price range is fine. The biggest thing, like I love all the features, is the weight. If
Mm.
it has all of the vibration in there and it's heavy, a lot of people are just gonna go with scuff.
But
And the other
even with
thing is
the
that
springs in the back, like it adds weight to the controller. The DualSense is already heavy with the basic features. You have a
yeah,
microphone, you have a speaker, you have a lot of stuff in there.
a lot of people competitively won't need that though. You like that's why like with Scuff as an example from what I've seen on the PS5, you can remove all of that.
Oh
Remove the speaker
wow.
function out, just remove it because it's just heavy. And you need something light, especially if you're going to be doing this, if you're going to be playing in this position for hours, you remove all of that
Mhm.
because of how light it feels in your hand. And that's the only thing. If Sony has it where they removed all of that unnecessary functionality, because this is going to be specifically like as an example, people playing Call of Duty Warzone, people playing a lot of competitive multiplayer games, third person,
Mhm.
first person, they need that advantage. And the advantage would be lightness. You need that light, feathery level feeling in your hand. Because as an example, the Call of Duty League for a long time was running off of PlayStation controllers, and that PlayStation market was dominated by Scuff. So if they can convince those Call of Duty pro players, hey, this is a good replacement for Scuff, they can eat in Scuff's gaming market because Scuff owns that Twitch level um fight fast-paced competitive shooter market.
Yeah, and Scuff was
That's where
pretty
Scuff is
much
good.
running without any competition for many,
Yeah,
many years.
and even with the Elite controller, Scuff is I've seen people still go out of their way to buy the Xbox Scuff controllers because that controller was so damn heavy. It was, like,
Yeah.
even more heavy than a basic Xbox Elite regular basic Xbox controller.
So
But
personally, for my opinion, that controller, like I'm very soft on my controller. Like I have two regular PS5 controller, and they're all pretty much intact. I don't see me going down and spend $200 on a new controller, but I feel like only for those, as you say, really competitive
yeah,
gamers, that would be the only use that I see for it. I'm not the market or the target audience, I think, for this product. But I
I
feel like it's
promise
good that they're at least
the
trying.
well, yeah, like, if they can break into it and that, like, if they can, like, just remove the lightness, I guarantee you the competitive scene will be very open to it.
And also, I think Sony
Very open.
announced recently that they were working on a adaptive controller, like Xbox is doing for years.
Finally, thank
Yeah,
goodness. Holy, like, okay, people might not
but
know what the
I don't
Xbox
want to go on
adaptive
it because I
controller
didn't
is. Yeah.
research it at all. I just saw something about it
All I'll
recently.
say is that the what the Xbox adaptive controller is that it's this platform, right? It's this
Yeah, to
system
help
to
handicap
help
people.
people, yeah, any people with any sort of disabilities have their own system of plugging in items to help them play the game however they want.
And
And
it
I think that
seems
was
to work fine.
huge.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Oh,
Even the
yeah.
unboxing experience was designed for people who might have a disability to be easier to open.
That's
And that
good.
was such a beautiful thing. And I'm like, Sony, it took you I was gonna curse. It took you so long to get this done. So I hope that they have that same consideration that Microsoft does,
Yeah.
especially for the unbox. Please do not put it in a regular box because that's not your audience. Please don't do that.
Yeah,
If you have
exactly.
to like go
They
to
thought
Xbox
about
and like
everything surrounding the
you
product.
have to, because that's a huge market of gamers that I think gets underrepresented, and something like that is very important. Like I guarantee you, I don't see Nintendo doing something like this, and if it happens, it's going to be a long time from now. Like I think Nintendo will probably be the very last person to do something like this.
Yeah, well, they already
Perfect.
started with a very back. They're really late on all of those stuff. Like you saw a lot of games like The Last of Us Part 2 putting a lot of help for like physically
Oh yeah,
impaired person to play the game, to be able to experience the game. So even software, like they tried to make the game more adaptive to everyone and more inclusive. So the fact that they're doing a controller with the software, I feel like it's just going to open up for more people. It's going to be good for everyone.
Quick little segue back.
Yeah.
I would say Naughty Dog, what you should do is that you should create a division within Naughty Dog that is specifically to teach people in different development studios how to make this. Or you make the software yourself and you outsource it. Like if you make it open source or whatever, but like whatever you did for Last of Us Part 2 and Last of Us Part 1, find a way to make it easy for other studios to understand and implement.
Yeah, and there's a lot of inner work in Sony where they send people from Santa Monica Studio or Naughty Dog to other studio to help them with those things. So I see that maybe that push from we could see that spread into other games too inside of Sony.
Like
for
if
sure.
Naughty Dog has to get a little stamp of approval, like this, like the accessibility options created by Naughty Dog or whatever. Like, please, because that would be
they won the accessibility prize for this, so I'm pretty sure they're gonna focus even more on that for the next time.
I think if they can optimize it to being a tool that, like, as an example, even indie developers can use, like that's how great the software is, where like they make it where AAA to indies can use this and
automatically on consoles.
That would probably be the biggest and most important change in all of gaming.
Yeah,
in my opinion, and
it's a big change.
That would be amazing.
And so moving on from Sony and Microsoft, we had other studios that announced some stuff of the third-party size. Ubisoft had some bad news this week. They had a very big project called Skull and Bones that was pushed for the 6th time from March 2023 to a vague 2023-2024 early release. And at the same time, they announced that they canceled 3 unannounced games inside of their own studio. So, yeah, I saw some new gameplays from Skull and Bone, and I don't see why it took that long to make. I don't think it looks that interesting. I think it's not a game that looks for me. So what do you think about the recent Ubisoft track record and this announcement right now?
I agree with you. The gameplay did not look that amazing, and there are pirate games in existence that seem to accomplish the same thing more effectively. So first of all, it was delayed with the 2023-2024, so they don't have a specific release date. Who knows if the game is going to be made at all?
And it was supposed to be coming out in 2 months. It's crazy.
They've delayed this game a long time. What has it been developed for, like 10 years or something? It's insane. But I don't know. They've canceled 7 games in the last 6 months, which is a lot. So I guess it's not a surprising thing to see from Ubisoft. Part of the reason for this is like they're known for having a toxic workplace, and people are quitting and complaining to HR and like treating your workers poorly. And having this toxic workplace is obviously not going to help with productivity. And yeah, that's one of the reasons they have to cancel so many games. Uh, they also seem confused about what this pirate game is supposed to be. I was looking at interviews with the devs, and they were saying that they like kept changing the direction of the game and trying to figure things out. And so, I, I mean, I
Yeah, because
guess
I
it
don't know if you
is.
saw
Mhm,
how it began a couple of years ago, but it was
mhm,
like a pirate, like League of Legend, pretty much. It was like
really,
5v5
Jesus.
battles ships, and like you had like smaller ships to do like scout and stuff, and tanky ship, and like it was weird.
Right. That's so different than what the gameplay trailer I recently watched looked like.
Exactly, they
It's
changed the
crazy.
whole game, the whole
It's
scope.
like they're like, it probably took so long because it seems like they're making, like, 5 different games and being like, "Oh, never mind, don't want this one, crumple it up, throw it in the garbage," right? Like, this delay could either mean, okay, they're taking the time to refine the game and make sure they do it right, or it could mean that they have no idea what the hell they're doing and the game is gonna be released as a directionless mess. It's hard to know.
From the first thing
Uh,
that I saw, I would go for the directionless mess right now,
that's what it
because
seems
it's
like.
like they feel like they're ready to show it, and from what I saw, I felt like they weren't ready to show it. So that's
Yeah.
really bad. So close to a release of a game.
It's
So,
not gonna have good reception either. I saw so many
oh boy,
complaints in the comments of the trailer on YouTube. Not a good sign.
what do you think about that, AOP?
Okay, so the issue with Skull and Bones is that the people at Ubisoft saw the highlight of Assassin's Creed Black Flag and decided we're only going to do naval combat. My biggest problem is that Ubisoft doesn't have a great track record when it comes to a lot of stuff now. Since their biggest money makers are games that are either the Assassin's Creed title, which even though Valhalla has a lot of issues, was apparently able to make them $1 billion, which I don't know how. That seems very sussy, in my opinion.
Very popular game, yeah, and there's a lot
Wasn't
of
that good?
stuff you can buy,
That
in the game.
yeah, that's but
No, I don't know.
the issue that I see is that if you're going to be delaying something for 6 times, that means there's a lot of mismanagement going on, and if that's the case, that means even with all of the issues they had in the past, and I hope that they change their workplace culture. The biggest problem is that it seems as if for a long time they were coasting on a very certain gameplay loop. And I even fault Sony for this, where Sony followed what I call the Assassin's Creed Far Cry game loop, where it's this third person open world collectathon
The problem is
that
that you're
has very
using
similar
Ubisoft
elements.
as if it was like one big company, where it's like 20 big companies.
No, what all I'm saying is
Like the
that
culture at Ubisoft Montreal is different than the culture at
no,
Ubisoft
I
Quebec
agree, but
and
that's
at
why the
Ubisoft
biggest thing that
Lyon.
I've heard was that it was a lot of the main headquarter Ubisoft stuff. So that's why I hope the culture is changed. But the problem is a lot of their games were extremely similar. Like aside from part of the
Hmm.
gameplay changing, you can see Far Cry didn't really look that different from a Watch Dogs, didn't really
Yes,
look that
they all
different from
took the
Assassin's Creed.
same open world like template. It looks like.
Right. And now the problem is, for some weird reason, their mismanagement is all over the place. There's no reason for a game to be delayed 6 times,
No.
especially right. Especially if, like you said, it's true. 2 months before release, something is going on here,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's for the good. Some of the games that I've seen that they either canceled or are stopping development on was a Division Battle Royale game and a Splinter Cell VR game,
They canceled
or
the
a
Hmm.
open
couple of
world,
mobile titles.
the battle royale they released too. What was
You know, the
Crazy.
Hyperscape game. It was
Hyperscape?
called
Yeah,
Hyperscape. Yeah.
exactly. Like
They
they canceled that pretty quick, and for me, seeing that they canceled 3 games with at the same time, I feel like this shows that there is mismanagement and
yeah.
that they are trying to figure those problem out and fixing them, because right now, because of this announcement, for sure their stock is gonna go down. Like it's obvious that people are gonna get away, but when they announce it publicly is because they're trying to fix it. So I hope that in the future we will see more innovative stuff. We still have stuff like Beyond Good and Evil 2 that seems to will never be released. They said it was 3 unannounced projects, so I don't know if they count Beyond Good and Evil 2 as an unannounced project since it's been so long, but we'll see about that. And
sorry to hear that, but for them, they're literally the poster child of either it has to be franchisable or it's a bust.
And the thing they screwed up that really make their eyes open, I think, is the Ghost Recon game that had such a bad
which one?
I think it was Breakdown or something like this.
Breakdown?
It's the new one after Wildlands.
A Breakpoint.
Breakpoint.
Oh, that's just because that's because they decided to take a military simulation, a tactical military game, and they turned it into an RPG.
And like,
and then they
it was an open world with like a bunch of bad AI.
The monetization scheme was so egregious that they literally had to like, hey, by the way, you can still play the game this way.
And I think that the community was so angry and so hateful that they really took the message and like, we're gonna fix up our problem,
And you know what didn't help? You know what's another thing that they're doing mismanagement?
What?
They were pushing Ubisoft Quartz, their NFT division.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much that, I think, yeah.
Which they had to can. I heard they canned that as well.
I heard they canned that after making public statement, and people got angry already.
Yeah, because as an example, you can earn an NFT in Breakpoint if you did 8,000 hours of gameplay.
Oh my god.
So so bad week for Ubisoft, and there was it was also a bad week for CD Projekt Red. They were fined $1.85 million for the bad release of Cyberpunk 2077, which was about 50 cents per share for the shareholders. So if you had a lot of shares on Cyberpunk, you're gonna have a little refund of 50 cents per share because of the state that the game was promised and not released in. So what do you think about this, Leroy? They were found guilty.
Do we know how much they made on that game?
Oh,
like
it's a financial success. Like they had the most
I know it's
a
success. What? I'm just trying to think of what. It's not even 2 million, right? It's 1.85 million.
I know, it's really small.
It's not that much.
It's like a little slap on the...
I'm glad there's something. At least the courts see that there's something wrong with that, a lot of the time, I don't know, these kind of cases can be mishandled, but it is a slap on the wrist. That's nothing, but better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah, it's not nothing, but it's close to nothing.
At least they've received legal condemnation for their actions.
That's how I see it. What do you think about that, AOP?
I'm extremely disappointed, and my day is ruined, and it's immeasurable at the level of disgust that I have. The fact that my biggest problem isn't the fact that the game turned out the way it did. My biggest problem is that, as an example, right, just to show you that something like this doesn't really matter, here's a free update for The Witcher and watch everybody's opinion on CD Projekt change. You know how many people who I've seen that were very disappointed with this? Disappointed how, as an example, a studio that made the great Witcher series was able to disappoint and just outright showcase that and I have to blame No Man's Sky for this. No Man's Sky, you opened up a can of worms that will never be closed, because the launching in a poor state and then getting better over time is apparently a viable business model.
No, both of these games had issues that prevent them from being what they targeted to be. Like,
that's not true, though.
In the story of No Man's Sky, the studio was flooded halfway through development.
Back then,
they lost everything. They had to restart, and
Mhm.
they had a deal with Sony where they had to release the game. So they were screwed because the marketing was out. They were a small studio. They can't spend a lot of marketing. They
No,
used Sony money. They had to release it. And
no, that I
the
agree with.
flood
I have
happened
no
like
problem.
middle of the development. They were screwed. And with Cyberpunk, we know they did a good game with The Witcher 3, but they never made an engine before. And with Cyberpunk, they started to do the game and develop the engine while they were developing the game. And a lot of interviews that I saw with devs were saying that they were waiting for thing to be implemented into the engine, and then they were implementing it, and then the team was developing on it, and then there was problems, and it was a real mess on how they did. So there's always reason. I don't think there's
No,
nobody in the market that tries to do this. It's like if you do Shadow of Chernobyl, like the second Stalker, and there's a war in Ukraine, like you cannot account for those things earlier. Like these
But you
are.
can
that
account for the things you need to do while developing the game,
That's
such
why.
as making a new engine.
That's why I
They could have
announced.
said
Yeah,
earlier,
that's why I
like,
think
"Hey,
that.
we're just gonna have to delay it. There's these unexpected problems with what we're doing,
That's why
and
I
we
think
don't
that
want to release a shit."
Cyberpunk is way more liable than No Man's Sky in
Yeah.
that
the But
example.
even with No Man's Sky, what I mean is that when it opened a can of worms, that due to the reception that it received, because people were like, "Hey, you stuck with this game, even with the flooding, even the fact that I didn't know that initial development was only 6 to 7 people." So when I heard that, I'm like, people's expectations were completely unnecessary at the
Yes,
time.
it
But
was a very
regardless,
small studio. Very, very small.
but regardless, they were willing to stick with the game and showcase, hey, we are going to stick with this product until we can make it what it truly can become. And that's amazing. And I'm happy. The only problem that I've seen is that for some weird reason, a game that launches in a very similar state is financially viable, even if it didn't deliver that initial promise to consumers of, hey, you're going to buy this and it's going to be complete. And when I mean complete, I'm not saying it has to be 100 plus hours and this, that, and a third. Just basic stability.
I think that
Not every
Cyberpunk
game in
is.
human history is a game that doesn't have any bugs or glitches. Most famous games that I've ever seen, if you speed run previous games from older generations, they literally exploit glitches. There's nothing wrong with glitches in games. But I couldn't even find out if this game was good or bad just because of how buggy it was. Where it was bricking my like I literally assumed that I
Yeah.
was going to lose my PS4 because it was
Huh.
bricking it.
And I feel like
Oh.
How
most
simple.
people learn from that experience pretty much. Like
I hope
nowadays,
so. I really
people
do.
are waiting more for the game to be released. Because, like, you can see with Cyberpunk, it was pretty sketchy. I talked about this in the first time we recorded the podcast about review embargo on Cyberpunk were post release.
Review embargoes
If
are
they had a
terrible
review
logistic term.
embargo a week before release, I would have understood.
Forget a week. I'm out. Forget even a week. The best review embargo I ever saw was for God of War 2018, where it was a month in advance. That is the
That's
most
too much
realistic
for
thing.
me.
The only reason
The
why I'm
hype is
saying
too
that
high
is
for me. I hate it.
no, but the only reason why I'm saying you have to give it more than a week is because 99% of the time, from what most reviewers have said, and I've seen reviewers, whether it's video games or tech, the way they describe it is like, look, not only do they put a limit on what we can say, but we have a very limited time on what we can do, and we have to get the video out because if we don't get the video out, then we miss the cycle, and we're not going to make this, that, and third.
Yeah,
So
because there's a lot of thing in video game where it's very, very
it's very tight.
confidential. It's very
Yeah,
confidential.
and it's
Like
not just the
when I was
confidentiality.
working at the video game testing place, we
Mhm.
had to leave our cell phone outside. You know, because you could take pictures of a game.
No,
Like
that
it's
part is
very
fine,
intense.
but what I'm saying is that on the reviewers, right? Whether it's Access Media, whether it's YouTubers, whether it's influencers, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to find out what's good or bad in something within a week or 5 days of the game coming out,
Well,
unless
they
the
have
game
the
is
review.
egregious.
Well, they
Unless the
have.
game is egregiously bad,
But the thing is,
right?
they have the review version months in advance. But the
That's
embargo is when they can release
I've never
the
heard that
public.
before.
It's like when the embargo is just when they can release the full review to the public eye. So they
No,
get
but
the
I've
game, they test the game. Sometimes, like Need for Speed recently, Need for Speed Unbound, they received the game after release, so they couldn't do a review like a week after it was released because the reviewer wasn't on the game.
no, but even that, I've never heard of a reviewer, unless it was Access Media, receiving let's as an example, right? I've never seen a reviewer receive a copy of the video game after it's gone gold, it's ready to get done. Let's say a month before release, but the embargo was only a week. I have never seen that.
I think that's
Most of the time,
trending.
I've heard of the review codes being given around that week or a couple of days, and then they have to review it, and then
Oh
boom.
no no
I've
no!
never heard of like the review code coming out
They
before, because
have
if that's
access to codes sometimes really early. Like Death Stranding, I know was like more than a month in advance. They had months to play the game before they had to review it.
but that's why I'm like, if you have months in advance, I guarantee you, like as an example, with Cyberpunk 2077, when they said, hey, you can't use any, we're not going to be able to do any gameplay footage from consoles. You can't use that at all. You can only use the gameplay
Well,
footage that we
people didn't
given, and you
get
have this very short amount
for
of time.
Cyberpunk.
That was very weird.
Well, for Cyberpunk 2077, the
Mhm.
reviewers, none of them receive copies of PS4 release. That's why they thought it was super sus, because all of the review they could release was PC version of the game.
And they
Because
can
the
only use the
only
footage given to them by CD
yeah,
Projekt Red
and
as well.
only the thing that they received was only PC versions, and they were asking and asking for the other version, and the embargo was the day of. That's a bad sign because they
No,
think
I
that
agree.
they're not confident
If
on the product. But when you see a review embargo like God of War that's way in advance, I feel like this is really, really a good sign that they're confident in their product. And I feel like
no,
this
but
could be a good way to prejudge a game before it's releasing. But I want to go really to the last
yeah,
topic
go ahead.
because we're getting a little bit long on time. The last topic is one game that I'm very excited about. It's coming out in less than a month, and it seems like I'm not the only one excited for Hogwarts Legacy. The devs
Woohoo!
recently revealed the gameplay videos of the flying mechanics, the combat mechanics, and the garden mechanics. This week, some numbers came out, and the excitement from the community seems to be huge. It seems like the hype is at the maximum level. First off, on Steam, they were at the top most wanted games by players the 5 weeks before release now, and they were also at the top charts of the sales on Steam. So the game is 5 weeks for releasing, and it's already on the top of the chart. So what do you think about that, Leroy?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm one of the people who pre-ordered the game, and I'm really looking forward to playing with it. The flying mechanic looks fun. The combat looks a little bit more standard for like a magic type of combat in an MMORPG, but I think it's nice that you can like combine different spells to find your own play style, things like that. So it looks pretty good. The graphics just look so high quality, and the design of the different rooms, oh, they're so beautiful. And the kind of architectural and interior design in games I really appreciate.
Yeah, I just want to explore this Hogwarts
Right.
building.
I love that the castle's huge and there's a lot to explore there, and you can go outside the castle, thank
For a
God.
huge open world outside the castle.
Yes, I'm glad that they made the world so big, and it what I'm looking forward to is the fact that it doesn't look like it will feel empty. One thing about open world games for me is that they can get boring when I'm traversing an environment that's just a bunch of hills or fields and every once in a while some little monster. To me that feels empty and a little lifeless sometimes. And I'm really thinking that Hogwarts Legacy will avoid that pitfall. And I'm excited. And again, I'm a Wizard 101 lover, recently got back into the game, and Hogwarts Legacy is like the closest thing to a graphics like modernization of Wizard 101. It doesn't have the card mechanics I love, and there is one thing I'm kind of disappointed about is that it's not an MMORPG. It's just an RPG. There is
It's a
as
single
far as
player story, yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh, it
there's
is.
no online component, which I
Not at
think is
Wow.
all.
really, really odd for this type of game where, there's a lot of personalization and customization. You have your house and stuff. Like, this is the perfect environment for some sort of online play with your friends to, compare your wizards and fight together or have a duel or something like that. And they don't have that. I'm hoping that maybe eventually they'll add it because, games
Instead, we're
add
gonna
online
fight for
play
the
eventually,
platinum,
but
you know?
yeah. Ugh, well, we'll see how it goes. That's the only thing that to me is disappointing, but other than that, the game looks really good, and I am excited.
By the way, for me, that news, like, it doesn't say anything about the quality. The videos that I saw were very, very thrilling to me. I thought the combat system
Yes.
looked a lot like a little mix of Arkham uh, City, like the Batman fighting style, but with spells and stuff, like more long range and
Mhm.
combos and stuff. It looks pretty nice. I'm, but that doesn't say anything about the quality of the game. We don't know yet.
Mhm.
Can come out
True.
really, really crap and could come out really, really good. So we don't have even
Yeah.
the embargo yet, so we don't know when the review can come out, like we were just saying minutes ago. So we'll see.
They
AOP, what do you think about the new Hogwarts Legacy by Avalanche?
I'm only intrigued, and I'm only intrigued because I've seen so much positive reception from people, not only because of the IP, but because if I'm being honest, there's not that many games that I can like off of the top of my head that deal with sorcery as the main focus. I could be wrong, but
The main
dealing with
mechanic
spells,
sorcery,
yeah, like
pretty rare.
it's that, and just
Mhm.
seeing that. I believe you were telling us before we started this, but like it's made by an indie studio or a first time studio.
No, no,
And
no. They made another game. It's just their first big title like this. I think they did
okay,
Disney Infinity before that.
but Disney Infinity was like 2013.
Yes,
Like
they've been
yeah,
working
a
on
while
that for a
ago.
long time.
So I'm interested because I haven't seen so much hype behind it, and it's interesting because
But you
it
haven't seen
can
much
be a
hype, but
renaissance.
it's right now the most
I
looked at
personally
game on
haven't.
Steam. Yeah.
Not like hype in the sense I've seen with like a Cyberpunk where like I've seen people who are fantasy fans excited for it, but it's not to the extent I've seen family friends who don't even know what Harry Potter is excited for it. Like I knew people who didn't know what like Cyberpunk is or weren't interested in like future tech stuff. Like I want Cyberpunk as an example.
Like my
However,
Mhm.
I do think that it's good, and I hope this as an example can probably lead to like a sorcery renaissance where like this can be the start of
Ah,
like
yes.
more games if it does well. Because
that would be
the
so
problem is we're
great.
all talking about speculation.
Yeah.
We're out
Yeah.
here speculating like this is crypto zoo, and we're speculating on if it's going to do well or not. So if it does well, I think this would be amazing. As an example, I would love to see a Dark Souls style game from FromSoft focus on sorcery. That would be very interesting because they have parts of it there. So if this does well, maybe like this could lead to other games like, hey, let's start diving into wizardry. Let's start diving into witches. Let's start diving into this a little bit.
Mm.
That would be very interesting, personally.
I I will say I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan. Like I liked it as a kid, like a lot of kids did, but it
Mhm.
wasn't like the most amazing thing. I thought the coolest thing about it wasn't really the story of the characters. I didn't care about them that much. And I'm so glad that they're not including all the same characters in this game since it's going to be set in the 1800s, right? I'm not going to see
Okay.
all the same stuff from the movies that I'm like bombarded by all the time. Um I I thought the world and, like, the beasts and the spells and, like, the stuff that exists in the world, the plants, whatever, that's what I thought was so magical about Harry Potter, right? And I think that this game can really capitalize on those aspects of the franchise and make it great. So even though I'm not a huge Harry Potter person, I am super excited for this. And I hope it is good. They
Yeah,
showed
I'm
a
in the
lot of
same
good.
boat where I saw like all of the movies once. I've never been that into those movies. They're good, like
Mhm.
I like them, but it's just the world, the lore,
Yes.
and feeling like you are into it. It's something that I really want to experience in a video game. I feel like I'm very excited to see what they're gonna come
Yeah.
up with. They've been working on that for a while. I saw like leaks like years and years ago of this project, and yeah, it's coming out very soon. So we'll have our answers very soon. I bet a lot of
Yeah.
people are gonna play it.
That's
And
why I hope, and again, to the developers working on it, I hope that your hard years of work have paid off. I pray that the game launches great. I pray that even if there are issues, that your experience is really fun and enjoyable, because you can literally, like, if this game does well, in my opinion, I think this can be the start of like more wizard stuff, like I was saying
A
before.
whole
And I
genre.
think that would,
Yeah.
like, I think it would be, it revitalize it. Like, that's what I think Red Dead Redemption did to Western games. Like, Western games were okay and they were like few and far between and not really good, but because of Red Dead Redemption 1, that there was a renaissance of like Western style games. And I think this, if done well, I hope it is, because more games, whether it's indie or AAA, more games doing this would be very interesting. So I wish you the best. For those that get the game, I hope it I hope it meets your expectations. And I'm so excited.
yeah, so for the question of the week, like it was a recurrent question that happened during this podcast, but yeah, we're gonna talk about release of game. So, how much time before release the company should start teasing their game or releasing gameplay videos and just announcing that their new projects?
I think this is maybe an unsatisfactory answer, but it depends. Because I think it depends on how it is handled, right? The strategy that they're doing. I think for studios like we've talked about, like Naughty Dog, uh, they have the budget to make these games, and announcing them and committing to a date was really hurting them. And so I think for them, really doing it later is the right decision. And I think the consumer and the workers both benefit from this, in that, like, the workers don't have to do crunch time, and the consumer gets the game relatively quickly after it's announced. I don't like waiting that long for games, but I think there are other situations in which, okay, maybe it's a smaller studio and they don't have the budget to completely make the game without, like, hyping it up a bit and getting people to fund them. That's fair. I think you can tease it a little then, right? I think it's a smart strategy to say that you're gonna make a game, and if you're going to really follow through and you show a lot about the development of the game, to potential players, I think that can be a good strategy. I've been following a game called Paralives, which is kinda like The Sims, but I expect it to be way, way better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So they've been
I
giving
have you
development updates like
Yes,
weekly.
they have a Discord server, and they give updates, and they allow users to put input onto different questions they're asking. So if they're developing the outfits
With the
for the
community.
characters, right, if they're developing outfits, they'll ask a question in the Discord like, "Hey, what kind of clothes or clothing features would you like in the game?" And they'll get feedback. And I think that talking about a game you're planning to release way early into its development does have the benefit of allowing the studio to take in user feedback and modify their approach to creating the game as they take that. So I think it can result in a better end product. The issue is you really do need to follow through, right? And also I do think if you don't know the date you're gonna release and you can't commit to one, don't. I'm fine with a game being teased and them saying like, "Hey, this is a project we have for the future, but we don't know when it's gonna be." Again, Paralives did that, and I'm perfectly fine with that because I know based on the developments that they've been showing everyone and the feedback they've taken that they really care about the game and they wanna make a good game. And so even if I have to wait a long time, I'm gonna get a good product and it's worth the wait, and I'd rather a good product that I have to wait for than a rushed product that is terrible just because they wanted to meet a certain deadline.
I would
So,
agree
again,
with
I think it depends.
the
Just
example, like we said earlier, like No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky had
Mm,
financing from Sony. Like with the flood and everything, they might have gone under if Sony wasn't there to
mhm.
support the studio. And if they didn't release the game, they would have also gone under because they would have been screwed. So yeah, I think also it's a really case by case thing.
Yes.
But for me, I think that saying that the game is coming out publicly, like in an event, you should at least have a lot of the game done. Some games,
Mhm.
like Anthem, recently announced their game before it was even started. They had
Yep.
the trailer, CG trailer out, and the devs didn't even know what the game was gonna look like. So
Right.
this is too early. But when you announce it, like I think Killzone 2 also did that. It ended up
Yeah.
being a good game, but yeah, in the end. So it's a very case by case. And
Yeah,
AOP, what do you think about
mm,
this?
I agree with what Leroy said. However, I'm going to be a bit more of a dick, right? And the reason why I'm going
sure.
to be a bit more of a dick, and I apologize for the cursing, but the reason why I'm going to be a bit more strict, say, is because we are in a generation now that a simple trailer can get viewed by certain influencers and blow up on its own,
True.
right? Nintendo has probably Nintendo doesn't understand the internet, right? They have the best plan for when it comes to showcasing trailers for releasing. Most of their directs, you don't have multi-million dollar marketing budgets that are sometimes eclipse the game itself. Release a couple of trailers, they'll announce it every once in a while, but that's pretty much it. I live in New York City. I see that in our public transportation system, you'll see posters of games all the time. Never really see anything for Nintendo Switch. You might get like the announcement, but that's about it. But you're not going to see like 7, 8, 9 trains covered in like those games. So for me, if I had to put a timeline on it, I would put 6 months. I would say since the game is almost near to completion, you are officially in the post production phase. You're focusing on quality control. You're trying to make sure that the game is bug free as possible. You're finishing off any extra development that you have. I don't think that any game in this current generation needs multi-million dollar budgets just for the marketing. I think that is unnecessary, especially when all of that money could have went to the game itself. Personally. Now, the only reason why I'm saying 6 months is because at least at that, it's a realistic time frame and it showcases that they didn't really have to go around and like focus on how are people going to receive the game, and if they don't receive the game right, we're going to have to make changes, because I've
And
heard stories. I could be
also,
wrong, but
usually
yeah,
at 6 months before release, the game has been in testing for a while now. They pretty much know if the game is going well or not, and they can know by the testing if it's gonna be a product that's gonna be finished soon. Like they can
yeah.
fix pretty much in 6 months before release. They can fix a pretty much short schedule, but before that, it's hard.
Oh,
Mhm.
I agree. I just think that I could be wrong, but I've heard stories of studios that announce the game, and because of consumer feedback or expectations, they completely scrapped the initial idea and started from scratch.
Oh.
And stuff like that, I think, like when you're doing it 2 to 3 to 4 years before the game comes out, it's hard, right? Like the exception I've seen is indie games, and that's the only market I've seen that doesn't do radical changes. Like as an example, there was this one game that was showcased in 2015's E3 event under Xbox, and it was called Tunic, made by a single developer, inspired by classic Zelda
Yeah, but it
games.
was really backed off by the Game Pass thing since the
Yeah,
beginning.
but like a game made by a single developer, I can understand it taking a couple of years before it comes out. But we're talking about these multi-million dollar games, sometimes 100 plus people, sometimes several studios. and sometimes the budget is even more than the game itself for the marketing. And it's like, I understand you want to get more people involved, you want to get more eyes on it, but
Well, depends
imagine
also.
if
Sometimes the game doesn't cost that much. Look at Hearthstone. I'm sure that
I
the
heard.
Hearthstone
Mhm.
budget is more into marketing than it is in developing this game. You know,
Yeah, but I agree. But imagine if all of that marketing money went into the game itself. Maybe
then the
things
game
would be
wouldn't
different.
Mm,
sell and they couldn't make a sequel.
I think
But
I do think it's unfortunate, like, it's an unfortunate reality that marketing matters so much. I
I
do
agree.
Exactly.
think
I
that
agree. I agree.
you're kind of right with big studios, these big names, especially if it's, like, one of their main titles that everyone knows about, then they probably don't have to be as
Activision
heavy-handed
and
on it.
Call of Duty, for
Mhm.
example.
Yeah.
Right,
Or
right, stuff like
Bethesda and
that.
Starfield, yeah.
Right. Those I would agree with you on that, and I also think if you have the budget to nearly finish a game without needing to get any extra hype or any funding before then, and then you announce it when it's nearly finished, you should do that. I do think that's probably best. Um, but I guess I'm not a marketing strategist, right? I could be wrong that that's the right path for them, but I do think for consumers it's pretty good and can avoid a lot of disasters. So, it it's hard, but I do think
I agree.
marketing, unfortunately, does have to be huge, and I think this is even more true for free-to-play games that end up just, you know, being monetized on, like, microtransactions and cosmetics and stuff like that. I think, if initial sales are what matter, like, you have to get a lot of initial sales, but I think at least you're guaranteed to get that, like, money when someone buys the game. I think
I want to
sometimes more
also.
rigorous marketing is necessary if the game is free at first. You gotta hook more people in because there's no guarantee they're making that
I
purchase.
want to bring also another angle to this. Is like the hype that's building up. If you announce a game in 10 years and you don't release it for 10 years, the hype is building up to a point where you cannot match those expectations. If you
Mm,
look at like Final Fantasy Versus that was announced early PS3 days, and then it changed name and becomes Final Fantasy 15, and then comes out 10
right,
years later, of course some people are gonna be disappointed because they're
right.
gonna say, "Oh, this game took 10 years to do. Like this is gonna
It should be
be
amazing. Yeah,
exactly the expectation are super high." So that
like
could
this new
also
new
be a
pirate
thing.
also with Ubisoft, right? Like if they had just waited to announce the game until like now, then people wouldn't have had such different expectations considering they seem to have scrapped the concept for the game multiple times, right? And
Yeah.
so I think the opposite can also happen, right? Like the hype doesn't continue to build and you've waited so long that everybody forgot and moved on to a different game and the hype has
Mhm.
died down, right? I don't know, you gotta hit that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I
Of
think
course. Of
I
course.
think
Of
the
course.
most important thing about announcing a game is commitment and certainty, right?
Mhm.
Because if you announce a game 5 years before it releases and you do a bang up job and it's amazing, then you're golden as long as you know you can follow through. If you,
Yeah.
announce a game a month before it releases and it's amazing, great. Whenever the point in time is that a studio can be sure that they're going to do this thing from start to finish and make a good product, that's when they should announce it.
Yeah. I just think that the strategy that has been successful is what's gonna stay. And that's the only problem where
Mhm.
it's like any of the options that we've just described, I think would be not only beneficial to the consumer, but also beneficial to them because at the end of the day,
Money
the
speaks. The
the
market
money will
speaks.
speak. And if they make a great product, people will support it
Absolutely.
regardless.
But I feel like when
So,
they do a
Mhm.
bad product, people support it too.
well, it depends,
Mhm.
Look at
right?
FIFA. Look at all those
But that's
sports
that's
games.
only I would say when it comes to sports games, it's unique because the developers or the publishers make it a monopoly.
They
Like there
revolutionize
hasn't
them.
they no, it's not even revolutionizing the market, is that they literally have exclusivity deals to make sure like, hey, you're not gonna be able to get this anywhere
Yeah, but even
else.
then, FIFA
You know?
wasn't like a tenth of what it was like 7 years ago. before the Ultimate Team and stuff, this is where everything changed.
Yeah, but a lot of people would say a lot of the sports games changed for the worse when they implemented the,
But the
trading card
market
system in their games.
tells the other way because they're
No, of
making
course they
10
literally making
times
billions.
more
They're
money. So
literally
people
making
are
billions off
buying
that.
the bad stuff. I feel like it's good to incentivize people to not get into those microtransaction, because then if everybody speaks with their money, they would go away.
No, I absolutely agree. But the way things are marketed, and there are just some genuine people who enjoy it and willing to spend the money. There you go. And
They're
at the end
also
of
a
the
little
day,
manipulated to act that way, they're pushed towards
oh, of
these by.
course. You're talking about companies that can win or that can make billions of dollars. They're going to put resources in there to accrue that money on a consistent value. That's why, like, even though EA was like shutting down studios and stuff, I believe they had another company, Activision Blizzard, fired 800 people, I believe, in 2021. Peak profits, the most successful year ever in the company, but they're firing people as an example. And they didn't have a lot of new games under their belt. It was a lot of the monetization systems that kept them afloat and allowed them to peak. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, video
Was
games are a business.
2021 their controversy though? Like,
No, that was last year.
Was that?
That's when they came out last year, and the state of California dropped that class action lawsuit. Oh, and remember in
Oh.
2022, Activision Blizzard cleared Activision Blizzard of any wrongdoing.
So
Remember
yeah,
that.
so
we investigated ourselves, guys. It's fine.
that was a great podcast, everyone. If you have some comments, you can send them at contactprogressivetv@gmail.com. It was nice seeing you guys. It was a great. I had a great time. I hope you had a great time too, and hope to see you next week. And see you all. Bye bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.